Today in this video, I want to talk about 8 different signs that you've landed on your purpose. So most people, when they're talking about purpose, what they're really referring to is vocation in most cases. And vocation is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as being a strong feeling of suitability for a particular career or occupation. The root of vocation is vocare, which is to call. So it's a calling. So most people, when they're looking for their purpose, they're looking for a way to make a living, a way to make money, or to replace their current job with something that resonates with them, that has more passion, that they are naturally gifted at. But not necessarily. It could also be for people that you don't care about making money. You have your way of making money, you have your job, and you want to do something on the side. You have this calling at a soul level that you have to do. I like to define it as being work with a lowercase w, which is just anything that makes money, you don't really care about it, versus capital W work, which is the work that feels most meaningful, it feeds your soul, and it feels like you were put here to do. So when we start to look online, for example, to find out, okay, what is my purpose? How do I discover my purpose? What we typically find is we get Joseph Campbell's quote to follow your bliss, or we get that, okay, your purpose is at the intersection of your natural talent, what you're passionate about, and what the world needs. And it's basically in the center of that Venn diagram. But that's usually where it stops. And so most people are left to their own devices trying to get clarity, and they're still struggling with it. So today I wanted to create a list of 8 different signs that something is your purpose that I've seen both in myself as well as other people who have clearly found their purpose. Maybe not all of them are boxes that check for you, but in many cases they overlap and they kind of all point in the same general direction. So the first sign that something is your purpose is that you make rapid progress. So this is the idea of your superpower. The book, First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham is a great book that talks about this. It basically says that there is the 4-lane highways that we all have. Everybody's gifted at something, versus the road off to the side that runs parallel to the highway, which is like a 2-lane unpaved road full of potholes. And so if you're doing your purpose, you're doing your superpower, you're in your natural ability, you have maximum flow, you have maximum velocity, maximum efficiency, versus if you're doing something which is not, you're more like on that other road, going over the potholes, going slow, and it's very inefficient and it's difficult, and it's, just not where you belong. And this book basically explores through Gallup's studies of what makes a really excellent manager versus what makes a very mediocre manager. And they found that in the companies, the best performing managers were the ones who simply filled the roles with somebody who was gifted at that area. And so they didn't go through the usual thing like, okay, if there's this rock star salesperson, after 5 years, let's promote them to being a manager. Or maybe they're not gifted at being a manager, they're just really gifted at the selling part. So these managers would break all the rules and just ignore all of that and just keep everybody in the right place. So that's the first one, which is that you make rapid progress. You fly what everybody else crawls. So if you look at a class that you're talented at, after 2 months, you'll find that you're running circles around everybody else. You are really bored with the pace of the class. You're improvising with the teacher. You're being creative and you're playing. You'll find that typically will happen when you've discovered your natural talent, which is obviously a key component of your purpose. A second sign that something is your purpose is that you have excellent taste in it. Even before you start studying in that area, or even before you start working in that field, most of the time people who have a vocation or a purpose around a certain area, they already come pre-packaged with really excellent taste. They just know in their bones what is high quality and what is poor quality in 2 seconds in that field. That could be true for design, it could be true for understanding fabrics, it could be in the world of food and chefs, or it could be in music, or it could be in engineering, robotics, coding, whatever. You just have that, maybe it's like a more complex set of neurons around that area, which is just more complex, has more depth to it, connected up with your sensories, so you just know when you get more feedback in that area versus somebody where it's not their purpose. A third sign that you've landed on your purpose is that it doesn't feel like it's forcing, it feels more like it's releasing. So what I mean by that, I was watching a video many years ago about this one guy was a very high elite athlete, does triathlons, etc. and was talking about his training and how he perceives it versus other people. He said, for example, when he enters the water to go swim, compared to other people where they're basically pushing it, they have to get in the pool, have to go training, it's kind of a motivating kind of energy as they step up to the plate. For him, his perception was that when he gets in the water, he finally, in some moment of his day, has the opportunity to just let go, and just to let it all out. So it's kind of a releasing of what's already there versus kind of trying to push and motivate yourself all the time. So an analogy might be that if you're off your purpose and you're doing something you're not really good at, you're not really built for, you'll feel like you're constantly pushing the ball up the hill. But if you finally lock into something which is your purpose, it's like you finally can just push the ball down, it goes out on its own accord. Or it's like the dam has built up, and finally when you sit down to the work, the dam breaks and it all just kind of comes out. This is like flow state. This is where you are more like the vessel and everything just comes out of you. So it's a completely different energy when you're doing, when you're on your purpose, where it just feels like it's coming out of you versus you have to drum up ideas all the time. You have to force it, you have to push it. It kind of does the work for you, like it wants to come out of you. The fourth sign that something is your purpose is that you have exceptional memory around it. So we are bombarded by millions of stimuli every single day, and 99.9% of it is completely discarded, like water off a duck's back. And so when there is an area that you have exceptional memory, it goes back to months, years, even decades. I mean, for myself, this happens with this idea here of big ideas. I can remember perfectly the quote. I can remember exactly which book it was, the author, even where I was when I received that idea, or I first heard of that idea. And I noticed that a lot of other people that are on their purpose have the same thing. I'm sure that, for example, Quentin Tarantino had an exceptional memory around movies long before he even became the famous movie director. He would just have this image of these little clips of these moments of a movie, the genre, what the actor said, what the lighting was like, what the angle was like. Just have this whole reservoir of this whole library of ideas in the background of your brain. And what's happening here is that when we have strong memory around a certain theme is because our brains consider it to be very important. The brain always lets go of any excess information on the hard drive that it deems to be unnecessary. It's just just put directly to the discard bin. But when you have phenomenal memory, obviously that means that your brain is telling you that this subject has importance, it has meaning. So obviously it's related to your purpose. And what often happens is that even if you don't step into your purpose for a long time, many years go by, for example, all of that knowledge you've accumulated will roll forward into your work when you finally step into it. The fifth sign that something is your purpose is that you are drawn to the tools of the trade. Or basically you are attracted to the whole sphere of that area in general. Even before you even know that you're interested in it, before you even know that it's your purpose or even take any first steps. A classic example is the lead singer of Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler. I was watching an interview with him, and he says that even when he was a child, he would walk past a guitar shop with the musical instruments, and he would remember seeing all the guitars hanging from the wall, and it being almost a religious experience for him, just being in this magical place full of all this unlimited potential that just filled him with excitement. Writers often will be really drawn towards stationery shops and everything around writing and paper and the textile and the inks. And even people who are in the tech world, they're often drawn towards technology, computers, etc. So anything that you really feel called to the general area, there's often a sign that your purpose is somewhere within that sphere. A sixth sign that something is your purpose is that you can't seem to escape it. So this is the idea of when, let's say you're a business person and you get a flash idea to do something. You say, it's a really great idea, I should do this. But then 5 minutes later, it's gone. And maybe you wrote it down and you read it again and you say, oh yeah, that idea, I really should do that. And then, ciao, it's gone again. Versus there's this other idea that keeps coming up, and when you're not even doing anything related to work, maybe you're just showering, it pops in your brain. And then a month later, it pops in your brain again and again. It seems to be pursuing you, like it's following you. Usually when that happens, it's an obvious sign that something needs to be looked at. Like it wants to be actualized. It wants to be enacted. It wants to be brought into this life. The same thing is true for calling, is that perhaps you watch a TV show and you're really inspired to do something, but then a month later it kind of disappears. But you try to push yourself to do that career. Like, I really want to do that. I like the idea of being that. By contrast, there's often this career that just calls you and it keeps coming back to you again and again and again. And maybe you reject it, like you're rejecting the calling of the hero's journey. You prefer not to do that career path, but you can't get away from it. It can't seem to escape it. It just keeps revisiting you again and again and again. And obviously that's a sign that it wants to be lived. A seventh sign that something is your purpose is that there's nowhere else you'd rather be. So this is the idea that Steven Pressfield talks about. He wrote a book called Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be. And for me, I have a distinct memory of working in the corporate world for a while. And I remember every single time I was sitting there, I couldn't wait to get away and start doing some passion projects, something that I really wanted to do. And even when I found a job later that I thought would be a dream job, and I finished there and I got the position, I was sitting there and realizing, this isn't it, I want to be somewhere else. So what you'll notice though when you finally land on your purpose is that that disappears. You no longer have this feeling of somewhere else you want to be. That somewhere else you want to be is usually your purpose. The eighth and final sign that something is probably your purpose is that when you step into it, you make the switch from being a loser from the eyes of society, or maybe even the eyes of yourself, into being respected. So what I mean by that, you hear Joe Rogan talk about this all the time in his podcast, how prior to stepping into doing his world of comedy and doing TV shows, he was a limo driver, he was doing construction jobs, I believe. And he said himself, he felt like a fucking loser. And so I have these different friends of mine also that were doing different jobs. They don't feel connected to it. The money's not there. And they're just sort of in this weird, shitty job, and they're not showing up in life in a really inspiring, wow way. They're kind of down. And so that typical idea of what we consider in society to be a loser often is what looks like when someone's just in the wrong position. And even if you have all these faults and you have all these different negative attributes, what happens typically when you step into your purpose is that those negative attributes become assets. So the shit becomes gold. So for example, somebody who's gone through a lot of issues with, let's say, alcoholism, if they for some reason, for example, end up in a place where they're supporting people who are struggling with alcoholism, suddenly you have transformed those loser traits, or those traits of kind of struggle that people look at you negatively in society, as being positive. And you can actually showcase them proudly and say, okay, yes, I went through all of this, and because you went through that, you offer more value to the people you're helping. So most people, the wrong place, wrong situation, the way they feel, the way they're showing up is I feel like a loser in life. But when you shift into your right thing, even if you're making no money, even if you haven't got any traction yet, just the fact you've locked into it, you get that high self-esteem. You just get that high level of, okay, I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, and the world feels that, and you project that, and you get that respectability as a result. So that's it for this video. Just 8 quick little weird, obscure, subtle signs that something's your purpose that I don't hear people talking about very often. So like always, I hope you got value out of this video, and we'll see you in the next one.